Okay, this is a tutorial on how to get a alpha matte from most footage, as long as you don't, if you don't have a green screen. This is good for stuff like the run trail. You can do other effects to it, I'm sure. It's not going to give you a perfect alpha matte of yourself, but you don't need a perfect one for a run trail. So, you may be able to use it for other things, but just remember, with this kind of footage, you have to have it on a tripod, your camera on a tripod, and you have to have your white balance, exposure, and focus all locked. Because if you don't, you're going to get fluctuations to where this will make it not work. Like, as you can see here, nice steady white balance, exposure, and the focus. If you have an automatic camera, and say you're out here, and then you come close to the camera, your automatic focus and exposure and white balance are all going to adjust to make you look correct. And any fluctuations in that will mess up the this effect. You can't do a difference unless you get, like at the end here, we're going to make a still frame, freeze frame. We're going to freeze frame this, and we need this to be, this freeze frame that we're going to make, we need it to be the same as the rest of the footage. So the only thing different will be the running person, the subject. That's why, like leaves and things like that is going to make it hard to get a good mask of it if you have other things moving in it. And it, kind of messes things up if you have like things in the background with lots of edges like I do. This is a really hard clip to get stuff from because of all that. There's a lot of sharp edges in it, and that makes it really hard to get it correct. If you have like a clean background, like say you're doing everything in front of your house or something like that, and it's one color, that's pretty much perfect for it. But when you have a lot of sharp edges, that makes it even harder. So what we got to do is going to go ahead and I chose this clip because it's pretty hard. It's got the leaves in it, and it's it's got this. It just makes it a pain in the butt to have the fence there and the lines. Now the power lines ain't too bad, but these poles going this way, all those sharp things really mess things up. But if you get good footage, and that'll work with it, then just give it a try. Okay, first thing we got to do is take our main layer, and we got to first, when we import the clip, just got to right click on it, go to interpret footage, main, and preserve the edges. And then click OK. And take your project, alt click on 8-bit to turn it to 16-bit, just so we get the most colors possible, just to make sure we get as best as we can. Okay, once you do that, go ahead and duplicate your video, Control D, or just do it the way I just did it. And so you have a second footage. Okay, now just scroll through the timeline until you get to a point to where you're past, till you have nobody in the scene. And then on the bottom clip layer, you want to freeze frame it. So go to Effect or Time, freeze frame it, and then you have a freeze frame of it. So only the top clip is moving now. The bottom clip is frozen, like that. So if we turn the top layer off, you can see it's frozen. The still picture. Okay, now that we did that, now we have to go to the top clip and go to Effect, Channel, and Calculations to add calculations to it. Let's expand both the source and input. And for input, we need to change RGB, the input channel, to green. And for the second source, second layer channel, we got to change to green. Because for video, DV footage, digital video, green is the clearest channel there is. So we're going to extract from the clearest channel. Okay, so for the second layer, we have to choose the bottom layer. For second source, second layer, that's going to be the bottom layer. And we got to set our blending mode to difference, from normal to difference, and turn second layer opacity all the way up to 100. Okay, now as you can see, it almost gives us a good alpha matte or mask just like that. Just it kind of separates everything, and just whatever moving is going to be kind of like in this inverted mode. As you can see, I'm in there, and you have the trees, which you can mask out. that's not a big deal, but concentrate on the subject. Don't worry about the trees, stuff that you can mask out with a simple mask. That's why, being that it's on a tripod, it'll be easy to mask this off. You just run a mask around it. If it's moving, you know, forget it. Everything's gonna turn an inverted color because everything's moving. But as you can see, look in the center of me. If we don't get a good clip out of this, a good mask out of this, all these edges are gonna show up, and you know they're gonna cut through the alpha matte. So you know that's what makes it a little bit more difficult. Stuff close is pretty good to work with when you're up close, but as you get farther back, you know, it kind of blends off into the colors and the shadows and everything, so it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. Okay, so once you do that, you want to pre-comp, select both of the layers and pre-comp it so it's its own thing. And make sure you move all attributes. Click OK. Now we have it in its own pre-comp. Now all we have to do is add an effect to that. And we're going to turn up, or first we're going to do a, let's see, noise grain. Go to effect noise grain and then median. And change it, give it a radius of 6. And this will kind of smooth out the things, the inverted look, just so it's not all jaggedy and stuff. Just helps a little bit, kind of smooth things out. So when we run a trace on this, it won't really try to pick up too much of the details inside the body. So it helps a little bit. Okay, once you do that, go ahead and add a color correction, brightness and contrast to it. And turn the brightness all the way up to start. And then for the contrast, you need to play with it per clip. Turn it all the way up and then bring it back. Bring it back to where, whoops, just before the clip starts getting gray, the black starts turning gray. You're trying to get most of the subject back, but you're not trying to blend the black into some of the body. So just kind of bring it back real slow. And right before it starts turning gray, that black on the background starts gray, then that's where you want it. You're just trying to save as much of the image as you can. Doesn't have to be super perfect, but try to get as best you can. Alright. So that should work. Now try to get to a rough part of the clip. You know, as you scroll through this, you'll see your effects and stuff are kind of like disabling as you scroll through in preview. That's why that happens. You'll see like some of the image come back, but try to get to a difficult part of the clip just for the tracing, to where you get it like everything's open. Like I want to make sure this arm's open. Try to get this to show under here. That should work pretty good. Okay, now once you do that, we're going to pre-comp this so we can move all these effects. So layer, pre-comp, move all attributes. Now it's its own clip. And now we go to layer and auto trace. We're going to do an auto trace. Set the channel to luminance. Make sure your work area is selected. Make sure you apply it to a new layer. Make sure that's checked. Minimum area I set to 720, just so I don't get any detail. I want as less detail as possible, so I don't want all these things showing up. I set my corner roundness to 20%. And tolerance I set to 1. Now threshold is something you're going to have to play with, and the blur you're going to have to play with. So right now I have it set to 32. So what you want to do is turn your blur to maybe 3. And kind of play with both of them until you get as much of this saved as possible. So right now threshold is 32, so I'm just going to go down to 20, try that. See, I'm getting some of it back. I'm going to go down to 15. Getting a little bit more. Don't worry about if this comes in, because we're going to mask that out. That's an easy mask. Going to go down to 10. Getting more. Now you can see the mask is kind of pushing out a little bit. That's because we have the blur level. So let's set the blur level down to 2 now to bring it back closer to the head. Set this back. Now we got the blur level to 2, so let's bring this back up. See if we can get, there we go. Threshold 15, try 16, try 20. You basically just have to keep playing with these until you can save as much of that image as possible and not have